Hey everybody, it's Karina with Karina Loves to Plan. Welcome back to my channel. So here I am for days 9 through 16 of 30 Inks 30 days. Here is a quick preview of what is to come. Let's go ahead and get started. Day 9, and we have Ferris wheel press Cabernet on the lake. And I realized I didn't actually post a video of me filling my pen, but this sample or charger came in a set that I bought from Atlas Stationers, and there's Lucy. I totally forgot that she had snuck into the video. She was sitting on my lap at this point. But I had put this into my Pelikan M800 black green, and I know they don't match, but for me, I really wanted to use this pen with this ink, and it was actually the pen and ink combination that I'm using in my A6 5-year journal. And so far here at day 9, it's such an amazing combination. This pen is so comfortable, but it's also so wet that there is no problem with this ink and the shimmer in this ink. It flows so well, and then even when you see me do the splatter here on my Hobonichi Cousin, you're going to see the shading, but you're also gonna see the really great shimmer. So if you're not familiar with this is the sandwich bag method. I was inspired by Clarissa of the Snowy Studio, and I've applied it to my Hobonichi Cousin spreads, and this is a great way to see the shading and different properties of the ink without a lot of mess. So I actually wash the bag or wipe the bag in between so that I'm just using one bag over and over again. And then the other thing that I am doing with my inks is actually painting. So I'm following a couple of tutorials on YouTube, and I'm finding that depending on who I'm following on YouTube, some really look at smaller details with loose watercolors, and then others are just bigger florals overall. But I like experimenting with the painting because it shows different properties of the ink. So then I'm also going to write down what ink it is as well as which pen. And now you're going to see how beautiful the writing sample looks once I have transcribed. So I'm working on transcribing Anne of Green Gables. I'm getting pretty close to the end of the book actually. And this practice just allows me to get to know this pen and ink combination more. So that's Ferris wheel press Cabernet on the lake. And then we have day 10 with a new pen. So most of the inks that I normally use in 30 Inks 30 days are from samples, but because of this gorgeous new pen, I thought I have to dedicate an ink to this that I haven't really used before in a pen. And I'm showing you how I'm going to fill up this Con 40. You guys know that the Con 40 Pilot is amazing, but their converters are not great. And I'm saying that in the most tactful way possible. But I wanted to use my new Pilot Vanishing Point, the 30th anniversary for Pilot in Taiwan, and I just thought this was the perfect ink to go with it. So I'm going to put a drop here on my 30 Inks 30 days grid, and then I'm going to swirl it around with the sample ink vial, which I find is a great way to get a circle without needing to rely on measuring cups and things like that. So then I'll go ahead and write in the name of the ink, and I think it's such a great way to see all of the inks you've used. And then I have another page where I list all of the different inks, similar to what I do for my currently inked every month. I like being able to list all the inks, but also have a reference for what I'm using this week. And I've been asked this before, do I empty out the pens at the end of the week? And the answer to that is yes, I do. I don't try to fill the pens all the way. I maybe fill them out to about a quarter or a third. And if there's maybe 1 or 2 drops left, I don't mind washing that out. So I do empty my pens as soon as the week is done. So here I am applying the sandwich bag method again to my Hobonichi Cousin. Yes, it does have a bit of bleed through and shadow, but I don't mind that too much. And then here I decided, because it's green, to try a different method of painting leaves. And it's always difficult, I think, to paint on Tomoe River paper because it's not going to react the same as watercolor paper. And while fountain pen ink is really fun to work with, it's not going to display the same characteristics as if it were actual watercolor on watercolor paper, but it's still fun to experiment. So I'm gonna write the day of 30 inks, 30 days, as well as what ink and pen combination. And for those who haven't watched my new pen day video, yes, there was a scratch on this pen, and I'm actually working with Muse pens right now to get it replaced. So they have been really great. So here is the writing sample with the Pilot Vanishing Point with a fine nib. I love writing with this pen. This is my favorite Pilot nib, is the Pilot 18 karat fine in the Vanishing Point. So soft, smooth, and bouncy. And this ink is just a perfect match. Day 11, and we have Dominant Industry. I'm gonna try and pronounce this as good as I can. Les Nymphes de Nuage. And I'm putting it in my Zodiac Penco in the Abalone, and this is the Virgo model. Gosh, it's so pretty. And I think this is the perfect match for the pen and ink, because this particular ink, I'm going to show you here in the drop, and you can kind of see it there in the pipette as well, is that it becomes this really nice light blue. And I do have to be careful with blues like this because they converge on being too light. And this particular one, in the swatch, it performs really beautifully. Now, this particular pen has an extra fine Yovone nib, but this ink actually performs quite well on it. There wasn't any hard stops or hard starts. It wasn't too dry. And I actually found the combination of the two really well. And this ink was actually quite legible, as you can see here in how I'm writing it. And then when I go ahead and do the swatching in my Hobonichi Cousin, the shading in this is amazing. And then even in the different pools of shading, you're going to see there's almost like an undertone of pink and purple. It's just stunning. And I think what makes it work for me is that the flow is actually good, even in an extra fine nib, and it is legible. So if you are looking for a blue such as this, like kind of that light smoky blue, this one is a great one. There's other ones that are really good as well, like Ferris Wheel Press Storied Blue and Diamine Celadon Cat. They're all in kind of that same color family. But this one is a really good one if you have tried the other two and wanted to try another one in that same color family. So here I am trying to paint a hydrangea, and I think I need to practice more with the hydrangea. It is such a fun flower to paint because it really is just about the repetitive strokes. You're doing little buds with your paintbrush and doing them in a star shape, and then you're bunching them all around in a circle. And then what shows the differences in depth is the saturation. So adding a little water to your brush so that some of these strokes are lighter, and then adding more ink to your brush to make some more saturated. So there I am writing the name of the ink as well as the name of the pen. And then you're going to see my ink sample, or no, my writing sample here. You can see how legible this ink is. And with an extra fine nib, this is actually very good. I enjoyed the flow. I did enjoy how legible this was. So this one I'm going to keep and probably try and explore further in the future. So today I'm actually going to do something different because I am going to be inking up my Esterbrook SD in Honeycomb, but want to find a kind of golden orange really, to match it. And I'm going to be mixing these 3 different inks. So in terms of mixing, it will probably be majority of the Pannonia Amaro Antiguo with a drop of Rosa Mexicano and a drop of Azul Frida. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'm going to add, just to be safe, like the tiniest, not even a drop, like maybe even just like dipping the syringe needle into the White Lightning ink additive from Van Ness, just to make sure that it can flow properly through my Esterbrook SD. So I'm going to do this as a voiceover because, well, you know me, when I'm trying to focus on something and trying to talk at the same time, it doesn't always work out. So I'm starting out with a base of Amaro Antiguo. So I put about half a ml into the ink sample vial, and there was Lucy trying to get in. She was actually sitting on my lap at this point. And then I knew that if I wanted an orange, it needed to have a drop of Rose Mexicano, but then to make it a little bit more gold, it needed a drop of the Azul Frida. And so I'm experimenting here with different amounts, and I realized that if I wanted it more golden orange, then I needed to add another drop or so of the Rose Mexicano. So the overall mix actually is half a ml of the Amaro Antiguo, 3 drops of Rosa Mexicano, and 1 drop of Azul Frida. And then here I am taking the White Lightning, literally just dipping the syringe. I didn't even soak any of that up into the syringe. I dipped the needle of the syringe into the Van Ness White Lightning and mixed that into the sample ink vial. And that was enough to make this actually a very wet flowing ink. And the reason that I needed to do that was because I am actually using this in my Esterbrook Esty Honeycomb, which has a needlepoint nib. So I wanted an ink that would be almost too wet in other pens, but actually the perfect flow in this particular nib. And one of the things that I was afraid of kind of did happen when I was doing the ink sample vial swatch was that it seemed to feather a little bit. So I feel like in other nibs, this definitely would be too wet, but for this particular nib, adding that teeny tiny droplet of Van Ness White Lightning was perfect. And you can see here, even when I'm drawing out the square and filling in that rectangle, with that needlepoint nib, it actually fills it in quite well. And I didn't feel like I had too many issues with it hard starting or anything. So this particular nib, the needlepoint nib, is one that is done by Kirk Spear, and it is like an ultra extra fine, or an extra fine. And I tried this at the San Francisco Pen Show and really, really enjoyed it. Now, what I'm finding is that because it is so fine, it does feel a little bit like a nail, but there's almost this, it's a combination of smoothness plus this sliciness in the nib, and you have to have the right ink in it in order to be able to enjoy it. And what I found was that I actually did enjoy writing with this needlepoint nib with this ink. So there I am. I'm going to put a very big drop on the Hobonichi Cousin, and then use my sandwich bag method. I've been using this sandwich bag for the last couple of months now, and reuse and recycle. So I do wash the sandwich bag in between every ink, so that definitely helps. But to just use one bag and then just to rewash every single time is super helpful. And then here I am drawing another cluster of little florals, and this particular one, you can see my glasses peeking in the corner, but this one really was just about little dabs with the paintbrush, creating little bunches of these very small florals. And what I like about this exercise is that you really are working on your control, you're working on your detail, and I think I smudged it as well. You can see I smudged some of the bottom ones with my arm as I just go over it with some more ink. But I find the practice of painting with fountain pen ink so fun because I have so much fountain pen ink. I'm trying not to buy watercolor because I have so much fountain pen ink. So here I am writing the name of the ink and really the mix of the ink, and writing the pen as well. And I do have to say that I actually really did enjoy this. The ink color was perfect, but also the flow was great. I think adding that teeny tiny drop of Van Ness White Lightning was perfect in the needlepoint nib. And you can see actually, because of that wetness, it looks more like an extra fine here than a needlepoint, but there was this sliciness to the nib, that type of feedback. Some might find it scratchy, but I really enjoyed these two together. Day 13, and we have, what ink is this? Oh, Birmingham Pen Co. Armadillo. And this is in my F3 Pens Moonlit Rodin. I have had this pen, I think almost a year now. And when I first got this pen, it was a big chunk. I think this was my first hand-turned pen actually, first or second hand-turned pen. And it was big and chunky and had a huge step going from the body to the grip section, and I was almost going to sell it, and then the owner of F3 Pens, he decided, or he asked me if I would like the pen returned to, be narrower, where the section would be flush with the body, and I took him up on that offer, and now I absolutely love it. And I haven't seen any other moonlit rod-ins with this same type of pattern. So here I am discovering that the nib was squished. You can see that it's bent. I don't know what I did there. So thankfully I had other extra, other Yovo number 6 nibs, so I just easily replaced that. But I don't know how I did that. I must have somehow squished it in the cap, but that was disappointing. And thankfully I had other Yovo nibs that I could replace and put it into the pen, but yeah, that was a shock to find that. I don't really know how I did that, but thankfully I had another nib here. And that's kind of why I like having so many pens with Yovo nibs, because if something happens, they're interchangeable and I can move the nibs around. So now I have an extra fine nib on here with Birmingham Pen Co. Armadillo, and I think this is the perfect match to go with the browns that are in the Moonlit Rodin. Now noticing that it matches really well with my nails. And the flow of this ink was actually perfect with an extra fine. I like my inks to be just that little bit wetter so that my fine and extra fine nibs don't feel super scratchy. I like the flow of the ink to just be constant, if that makes sense. So then putting a few drops onto my Hobonichi Cousin, and then I'm going to use the sandwich bag to then spread everything around. But like I said, I love this method because it really shows off the shading properties of the ink without creating a huge mess. The only mess you're having to clean up is basically washing the ink off of the bag. And then here I am, I'm going to go in and paint, and what I'm deciding to paint in this one is a rose. I have followed a few different watercolor artists on YouTube, and all have a slightly different way of doing the rose, so I'm trying a different method here. And really it is about the pressure of the brush, but also making sure that the lines aren't, I don't want to say all in line. You want them to look, what is the word I'm trying to say? Misaligned, so that it doesn't, like the petals actually look like petals rather than just lines of circles going around each other. Then adding a few leaves, and I think the ink that I'm using here, yes, I think is it Private Reserve Spearmint? No, I think I'm actually using I have no idea what green ink that is. Oh well. So writing in the day of the week, and then writing in the ink and pen combination. I still can't get over the fact that that nib was bent. I had that nib repaired, well, tuned and smoothed by Kirk Spear at the San Francisco Pen Show, and then there I go bending it. So there is the writing sample where I'm transcribing Anne of Green Gables, and I love this ink. It's like this purple gray that, depending on how saturated it is, it can look more purple or more gray. I love it. Great combination. Day 14, and we have Pannonia Amarillo with Amaro Antiguo in my Sailor Pro Gear Slim Manio nuts. Now, I just received the 3 bottles of this particular set from Amarillo Stationery, and I wanted to try just this ink on its own because I thought that this yellow matched really well with the finials on the Sailor Pro Gear Slim Manio nuts. So just placing a little drop there on the page and then swirling it with my sample ink vial, and you can tell it is bright and punchy. And I've been looking for a yellow that is a really good one. Like I've tried Ferris Wheel Press Buttered Popcorn, and it's lovely. This one, however, I did not enjoy. I think this is a great mixing ink, but on its own to write with, oh, this was tough. I had a hard time with this one. On camera, it looks so much more legible, but in person, I had so much difficulty with this. I didn't even finish my journaling spread because it was so hard to read, unfortunately. I mean, the sandwich bag swatches turned out beautifully, and when I paint the floral, I mean, I love the way that it looks like that, But in a pen, especially in a medium fine like the one on my Sailor Pro Gear Slim, it was just so hard to read. So here I am painting daisies with this beautiful yellow and adding a little bit more of the brown to add a little bit more dimension. I'm always critical of my daisies because I feel like they need to look more real, but this is loose watercolor, so they don't have to look like real life. There's a sort of whimsy that goes along with painting with fountain pen ink because it's not going to act exactly the same as watercolor. Plus, this is on Tomoe River paper, which is so different from watercolor paper. So that's one of the things I had to get used to as well, was knowing that this is not going to look exactly like it does on the tutorials that I'm watching. But I really like how I did the leaves here with the swishes. So then I'm going to write with my Sailor Pro Gear Slim Mono Nuts. This is a lovely pen, and once I had it tuned and smoothed by Kirk Spear at the San Francisco Pen Show, writes beautifully. When I first got it back in March of 2023, it was scratchy. It wasn't just the regular Sailor feedback, but it was scratchy, and I thought that I could somehow fix it myself, but it just was not a great writer. And then Kirk Spear tuned and smoothed it to the point where now I absolutely love it. It's a bit wetter, it's so smooth, gorgeous. But you can see here how difficult this ink is to read. I was not a fan, to the point where I'm going to show you here shortly that I did not even transcribe with this ink. I just painted with it, and I didn't even finish my journaling spread. So this is the first ink that I have not transcribed and just stopped using because it wasn't legible. Beautiful for mixing and painting, but horrible for writing on its own. Day 15, and we have, oh my gosh, Birmingham Pen Co. No, that's wrong. Diamine Ink Bent Triple Chocolate. And this was actually an ink that was sent to me by Gail of Fountain Pendulum, the one who makes that sample ink vial holder there. And when she sent this to me, it had leaked everywhere, so there was only a little bit that I could use. So this is why I'm syringe filling the converter. And the pen that I'm using here is my Laban Taroko in the Pinnacle colorway. So placing a drop there in my journal, in which you can see that it is getting chunky, super, super chunky. And actually, I really enjoy this brown. I never thought I would say that I enjoy browns, but you can see me trying different ones, and this actually flows really, really well in my Laban Taroko. But you know what? Diamine inks, generally the ones that I've tried, are good flowing, and I don't seem to have very many issues with them. The Laban Taroko has a Bach fine nib, and the two together were actually really great. The ink flow was just a little bit above average, and this nib is actually fantastic with this ink. I really liked the combination of the two. It was smooth, there was a little bit of feedback, but the nib itself actually felt soft and bouncy. I really enjoyed it. So then swirling and swishing and swatching with my sandwich bag. I love doing this. I know some people would be bothered by the bleed through and the shadow onto the other page, but I'm finding now that if I'm placing not so huge drops on the page, then it's not going to bleed through as much. And then here I decided to paint tulips. No, there are no such thing as brown tulips, but you know, I am going to be playing with so many different ink colors, so why not try a whole bunch of different florals at the same time, just to practice. And you know, there's that whimsy and play that goes with painting. It doesn't have to be real life. It's just playing with fountain pen ink. So here I'm going to write down the day, which is, gosh, day 15 already. This round of 30 inks, 30 days, I believe has been the busiest for me, one of the hardest for me, because I've had a lot going on. I'm behind with this. I had to catch up on transcribing basically maybe 2 days after day 16. So on day 18, I was finishing transcribing days 14, 15, and 13, 15, and 16 because I didn't do day 14. So what I have to say is that I don't know if I would do this again come April, but we'll see. But I have really enjoyed the act of transcribing. As you can see here, it's a great way to use the pen and ink combination. And this brown is actually really lovely. It's, I think, a good regular brown, if I can say that. And it's a good neutral color for those who do like the neutrals, and it is very good in terms of flow as well. Lastly, we have day 16, we have Jinhao Purple. And when I swatched this a couple of months ago, it was so wet. And I thought, I'm going to put it in my On a Whim Woodworks Cool Tone Primary Manipulation, and this has an extra fine Bach nib, and then I spill this everywhere. Oh gosh. But I put this into the extra fine nib because this extra fine nib will help control how wet this ink is. It's a gorgeous bright purple, and I really like that. But then in this nib, it's just the perfect combination. It's got the perfect amount of flow that I like, and there's no hard starts, and this nib is very smooth. But also, one of the things I have found with this pen, I love this pen, but I'm noticing that there is that step between the body and the grip section, and that is exactly where I'm placing my thumb and forefinger, and it's starting to bug me. And I hate that I'm that way, but the pen, while beautiful, because of where I'm placing my fingers, is now, it's a little sharp, that step between the body and the grip. So now for the sandwich bag ink swatching in my Hobonichi Cousin. I do love doing this every day in my Hobonichi Cousin and seeing the different inks on every day. And it also makes for easy decorating. I don't have to worry about which stickers to put down on which day. And then here I am doing more painting. I forget what these florals were called. Lily of the Valley. I was trying to do Lily of the Valley, and these ones were really just working with these smaller strokes, and I wanted to also play around with the saturation of Jinhao Purple because it's such a deep purple, but then adding a little bit of water to it and lightening it up a bit, you can really see the different shading properties of it. And it's just fun being able to play with fountain pen ink in this way. There's this, I don't know, it's just another way of using it. And I know not everybody is an artist, so no pressure that you have to do it this way or do your 30 inks 30 days this way, but it's just another way to use your fountain pen ink if you find that you have as many samples as I do or more, and you just want to be able to use what you've got. But also, who doesn't want to start practicing watercolor and just doing something new? So then adding the ink color and the day along with the pen, and then I'm going to show you here the finished transcription for day 16 and just how gorgeous this pen is. I really enjoyed the combination of the two, but that step that you can see there on the On a Whim Woodworks pen, that step is just at this weird spot.
So there are all the pens and inks for days 9 through 16. You will notice that there is one pen missing. That is the Pilot Vanishing Point, the 30th Taiwan anniversary. The reason that that is missing is actually it has been sent back to Muse Pens, and they will be sending me back a replacement without a scratch on it. So that is the reason that is missing. But out of all of these pens, I'm going to have to say that my least favorite is going to be the Amaro Antiguo. On its own, it's a great shader, but writing with it, it's so, on camera, it's legible, but in person, it is not legible at all. And I had so much trouble writing with it even in my journal that I didn't even finish writing in my journal for that day. And I tried to transcribe, and I couldn't see what I was writing, so I kind of gave up. But a combination that actually really surprised me was the Esterbrook Esty with the needlepoint nib with the Pannonia Amarillo mix. I actually really enjoyed that color combination, but also because I added like a tiny drop of the Van Ness White Lightning, it made what would have been really wet ink in other pens, made it perfect in terms of flow in the needle point. And the needle point, it can take some getting used to, but there's some sliciness to it that I really, really enjoy. What else did I really, and I love Pelikan M800 black green with that Ferris wheel press Cabernet on the lake. It's such a gorgeous ink, but also it's such a fun pen to write with. I love, 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 love writing with that pen. All right, but that is it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching and for following along in this series with me. This time has been a little bit of a struggle for me, but I'm going to press on and finish because it's a great way for me to use all of my pens and to use all of the ink samples that I have, because I'm looking at my desk and there's so many, so many. All right, so until the next edition of 30 Inks 30 Days, which will follow me through day 17 to 23. See you guys then. Have a great day.